or data factories? The outgoing Texas Education Commissioner describes the state standardized test as the heart of the vampire. Virtually all grade school and high school students know that springtime means test time. As the United States education system races to the bottom, the dispersal of state standardized tests to students around the country continues. A lesson in the classroom should focus primarily on problem solving and self-exploration, not on lessons primarily geared toward the state standardized test. The success of a teacher, let alone the success of an entire school district, should not result from the scores of a single multiple choice test. Will new government programs increase the success of students merely to hurt them in the long run? While the government may debate the change of the standardized tests, one must consider the negative effects of teaching to the test, basing teachers' evaluations on student achievement, and causing a decline in the U.S. economy. Teaching to the state standardized test involves a decrease in learning areas that do not target the state standardized test directly, thus lowering standards in school districts across the country, and reduced instruction time from teacher to student. Senator Jerry Moran of Kansas said, "Education is a process that involves more than just preparing for and taking tests. As Kansas ranchers say, if you want fat cattle, you need to feed them, not just weigh them. We must prepare students for the challenges of life, not just standardized tests." Numerous individuals realize the importance of state standardized tests, for the test provides a method of accountability for schools across the country. Although a form of accountability constitutes for the success of students, the state standardized test has become a corrupt form of culpability. For instance, an article from the Socialist Worker expresses that New York State has changed its state standardized test from the qualifications in which No Child Left Behind mandated to the new Common Core standards. In grades 3 through 8, as few as 31% of students acquired scores expressed as proficient in the mathematics and reading. New York State has released this state statistic, and Walter Isaacson of Time magazine articulates that many states have bumbled into a race to the bottom as they define their standards downward in order to pretend to satisfy federal demands by showing that their students are proficient. In order for school districts to avoid failing the state standardized test, a multitude of schools require monthly, weekly, and even daily progress tests to ensure that students will score proficiently on the state standardized test. An additional time spent on confirming that school students will pass the test leads to a reduction of instruction time in other areas of learning. Susan Slider, a teacher at Cambridge Public Schools, sent her letter of resignation due to the impact of the state standardized tests have on her students and their education. Slider explains, "When I first began teaching more than 25 years ago, hands-on exploration, investigation, joy, and love of learning characterized the early childhood classroom. I describe our current period as a time of testing, data collection, competition, and punishment. One would be hard to put these days to find joy in the classroom." Clearly, state standardized tests have taken away from the love of learning. A single, solitary, multiple-choice test could keep a student from progressing to the next grade level. One should take into consideration other factors that might hinder a student's performance, such as test anxiety, time restraints, and reading disabilities. Mela Baxter, a 2013 Hope Street Group National Fellow, shows concern. She states, "Some students are brilliant thinkers but poor test takers. Given the opportunity to show what they know on a hands-on manner, many students who would fail traditional tests would demonstrate they indeed have mastered the concepts. Since every student does not test in the same manner, would that not explain the discrepancy in test scores for both federal and state standards? A decrease in numerous learning areas, lowered standards, and reduced instruction time all account for failing students across the country. Clearly, the demands and expectations of state testing cause undue stress for both the students and the teachers alike. However, the testing probably put greater pressure on the teachers preparing for and administering the tests." Principal Anna Allenbrook of Public School 146 in Brooklyn, New York, speaks out for teachers, saying, "The morale is down because teachers are worried that people who don't know their work may make decisions about their job." The state standardized test now accounts for not only the success of a student in a school district, but also for the success of teachers. While administrators, parents, and students do not want teachers to base their lessons on the standardized test, by evaluating the success of teachers on the achievement of their students, teachers feel they're forced to do so. In addition, a student may not succeed on the state standardized test for numerous reasons, which a teacher cannot control. Miss Baxter of Matanzas High School in Florida speaks out for a student who missed dates in which he could take the standardized test due to back surgery. The student's absence forced him to take the state standardized test months after he received instruction on the content of the test. In the meantime, this student's test score will go into account for his teacher's evaluation. Similarly, Miss Baxter explains the scores of sophomores may constitute for the evaluation of a teacher of juniors and seniors who do not take the state standardized test. The teacher has not taught these students in class, yet half of their evaluation will involve the sophomores' test scores. In summary, teacher evaluations should not solely reflect students' test scores. As detailed in an article from the Socialist Worker, opposition to high-stakes tests entered in the national spotlight last year when teachers at Garfield High School in Seattle voted to boycott the measures of academic process tests. The campaign spread to 5 high schools and forced school districts to back off its threats to suspend teachers who did not administer the tests. The teachers of these 5 high schools realized the importance of teacher evaluations, but also recognized that the evaluations do not express the true success of the teacher and her students. While the effects of state standardized testing has not caused all teachers to protest, it has, however, pushed teachers into resigning from their teaching positions, as Susan Slider of Cambridge Public Schools did. Slider explains, "I reached a place last year where I began to feel I was part of a broken system that was causing damage to those very children I was there to serve. Consequently, many of the teachers who have successful students on both the state standardized tests and subjects not covered by the state standardized tests choose to further their careers in means outside of the traditional classroom. Teachers do not wish to teach in a school system that struggles to balance the state standardized tests with the advancement of their students in skills and subjects not covered by the standardized test." In Slider's letter of resignation, she goes on to explain her frustration with the standardized test. "I was trying to survive in a community of colleagues who were struggling to do the same, to adapt and survive, to continue to hold onto what we could, and to affirm what we believed to be quality teaching for an early childhood classroom. I began to feel a deep sense of loss of integrity. I felt my spirit, my passion as a teacher, slip away. I felt anger rise inside me. I felt needed to survive by looking elsewhere and leaving the community I so dearly loved. I did not feel that I was leaving my job. I felt now and I feel then that my job left me." Many teachers can understand the frustration which Susan Slider communicates in her letter of resignation. The U.S. public school system fails students and teachers alike. Likewise, school systems fail the citizens of this generation, as well as generations to come. Many school districts do not have the financial resources available to administer and proctor state standardized tests. Administering the state standardized test requires additional staff members, access to computers and the internet, and substitutes. Valerie Strauss says, "A typical elementary school of 700 students reported spending approximately $2,500 of their operating budget, and a large high school reported spending $15,000 on the same expenditure. While school district could use this large amount of money on new books, on teaching materials, and on updated lab equipment, the requirement of state standardized tests causes school districts to use their resources otherwise. The U.S. ranking in academics has greatly declined due to the financial resources and focus on the state standardized tests. 40 years ago, U.S. graduation rates ranked first in comparison to other countries in the world. Today, we rank 18th across the globe. When setting international ranking in both reading and math, the U.S. ranks 25th in math and 15th in reading. President Barack Obama points out, "This is a prescription for economic decline, because we know the countries that outteach us today will outcompete us tomorrow." One must realize the importance of students' education and put efforts into improving education for students across the country. While the government debates the changes in the standardized testing, society must consider the negative effects of teaching to this test, evaluating teachers' evaluations based on student achievement, and the U.S. economic decline. Education has failed and continues to fail students ready to enter college and even the workforce due to the mandatory state standardized testing. Diane Ravitch of the Socialist Worker concludes, "We should bend our efforts to change society so that each and every one of us has the opportunity to learn, the resources to learn, and the chance to have a good and decent life, regardless of test scores."